Over with,
Okay.
so you can.
I got a birthday party at 6
Yeah, I
o'clock.
know. Yep, I know. We'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
Got a nice crowd here for you.
You ready?
Okay. Okay, let me finish this business meeting. Okay, our second report for our business meeting is the treasurer's report, and Pat will give us a quick overview of the finances. One of the things we're doing about the finances, we've always depended on that little jug in the back room to finance ourselves and our membership fees, which are minuscule. But we've finally begun this house tour plan, and we're hoping to raise money by selling tickets and advertisements and stuff. It's a very exciting thing. It's the first time we've done it, and we're ready to roll. We got a big committee getting ready, and we're all working hard to make it a real good event. Pat, this is Pat Stringer. If you don't know her, she's our secretary.
Okay, the cash flow from January 1st of 2018 through October 27th of this year, our income totaled $6,591.06. Of that, $5,051.06 was donation money. Living history was $125, and our membership dues was $1,415. Our expenses, I'm not going to read the dollar amounts, but it was building insurance, maintenance, membership folders, the printing, miscellaneous expenses, postage, refreshments, supplies, paper towels, paper cups, etc. The utilities, that figure I will read. The heat was $1,543.95, along with the utilities, extra electric, and the design website. The overflows or the expenses were $4,029.06, so we made a profit of $2,562. That's
13 cents an hour. Thank you. Thank you, Pat. I think we should have a vote to accept. I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
I make a motion to
And
accept.
second?
Second.
Any discussion of these? Second? Okay. Those in favor, please say aye. The ayes have it. Good. Thank you. Now we have a nominating committee report. That one of the annual events is we capture all of these volunteers to continue again for another year. And Enid Silva is our chairman of our nominating committee. Enid, just put this close so we can record your golden voice.
So I can be even louder? Okay, I want to be on Dan's team because a committee for nomination doesn't have a team and I'm feeling jealous. But I gathered our information on our board of directors, and here we go. We have presently, for the ending year of 2018, Marsha Cornell Glynn, Sue Gaducci, Enid Silva, Robert Harding, Catherine Plant, Donald Plant, Marion Real, Jason Protami, Robert Barboza, Dan Sosha, Jeff King, and Patricia Stringer. That gives us a number 10. At this point in time, we have two members of that list that are not coming back for re-election, and that's Donald Plant and Jason Protami. So that brings us down to 8. I'd like someone to make a motion that we appoint these members back on for the coming years. Coming year. Someone want to make a motion? Thank you very much. Someone second the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Those members are returning to their board. Now, along with the board of directors, we have officers. And our present officers are Robert Harding, President, Sue Gaducci, Vice President, Robert Barboza, Secretary, and Patricia Stringer, Treasurer. They have offered to stay on for another term of 2 years, so if I could have someone make a motion to accept their slate.
Make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Dan. Someone second? Well, thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Now, because we have openings on our board of directors, I will give you the slate that we are presenting to you to add to the board. And at that time, if any of you members of the audience would like to be a member of our board, someone can nominate you, or you can nominate yourself, because we're not proud here. We're just begging. Our new members starting for the year 2019, Sally Aldridge, Jordan Burson, and Richard Gifford have offered to join our crew. Is there anyone else at this time? I have 2 more openings. Everybody's sitting on their hands. It's not really that cold. You can just raise one. Seeing no hands up, I'm going to say that the slate is, as given, will be voted on. So those are the 3, Sally Aldridge, Jordan Burson, and Richard Gifford. Someone make a motion to accept them as Kathy Plant way in the back. Someone else? So Bob Barboza. Our slate now stands with 2 openings. So if in the near future, when your hands get warmer and you want to raise them, please feel free to. All in favor, say aye. Thank you, Robert. Those opposed will be on the board. Thank you. Oh.
I'd like to congratulate our new members of the board. We continue to grow the board with different talents and different experiences. Among the new board members, the 2 members who are here today, Richard and Sally, participated in a first for our organization. We were invited to speak and to be the program at the Delano Family International Reunion, which took place last summer. And we presented some research that's been also put up on our site. Of course, the Delano family, among other well-known people, included Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and we were very honored to participate in that. The other new board member is Jordan Burson, who, if you don't recognize the name, is on the Dartmouth Historical Commission, which is a different organization than this one. It's a town government organization. And he is the head controller of all of the artifacts and historical collection at the Whaling Museum in New Bedford. A very tremendous responsibility. The business, like all organizations, we have bylaws, and we have reviewed the bylaws, and we want to make a few amendments to those bylaws. We have a handout to explain what they are, and I think Kathy's going to give you a quick overview. Enid,
Oh, she's big enough.
she's big enough.
Kathy,
Okay, she does a
would
lot
you
of the
be
work,
able to
but
pass these out? If you were lucky enough to get a membership letter from us, the bylaw changes were in that mailing. And so if you didn't get it and you're a member, then you can vote on the bylaw changes. If you're not a member, please refrain from voting. I feel like the town meeting lady. Please refrain from voting and sit in those outside seats.
anyway,
So let those get around. I know you have short minutes to read them. There's nothing really dramatic about them. It's just
okay. I take a quick peek. The committee that made these changes did a lot of study, like 5 years of study to make these changes. I can assure you they're well studied,
and we were.
but if you have some suggestions, we would welcome them. I'm looking for a motion to accept the changes to the bylaws.
After I read them to them, we'll go through them once.
You want to go through them?
Oh, I'm afraid so. That's the only way you can do it.
I don't think.
Okay, as proposed to you, fine with me. I don't have to go through them. That's wonderful. I have my reading glasses anyway. All right.
I make a motion to accept them as presented.
Motion has been made.
Thank you, Robert.
Motion made and seconded. We accept the amendments to the bylaws, and they'll be available on the website if you'd like to look them over. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, now I will continue introducing.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, wait, Susan has a word.
Education Committee.
Yes,
report.
okay, report from the Education Committee. It wasn't on the agenda.
Well,
No problem. Give it.
yeah, this will be very quick and sweet and painless. We now have all 3 elementary schools coming here for the Living History program. As of this past Friday, which was 2 days ago, we had 288 third graders come through here, going through 4 different learning centers. We use the classroom, which is intact upstairs. They learn how to spin wool with a very rudimentary spinning device. They learn how to write with a dip pen or a stylus, depending on what they remember, and then they play period games.
Super. Thanks, Sue. Before you came in, I had explained a little bit about, as part of our year, what a great thing the education of these third graders has been. It's a continuing thing. We do it every year. We even did it with the Friends Academy this year, I believe. And so it's really one of the signature programs of this organization. Start them young. We don't have a lot of young members yet, but we're trying to recruit them, and we bring them in. They talk about it when they go home and their family and stuff like that. Anyway, back to Cukie. Cukie has spoken here many, many times. I don't think there's any question that among storytellers, he's the tops. Among the characteristics of his approach, he always tells me the little second line of the title. And I may not look it, but I was affiliated with farming because my father was a farm hand working for Albert Lee's when I was a little boy. And I'm a little familiar with what he might have been referring to, he being Cukie, when he says, my memories of farming or how to lose your lunch. I can think of many different occasions when that could have been appropriate for me, but I'm sure Cukie is going to have a special story for you as part of his talk along with that. I should mention that Alice, his wife, is a local girl. She's from the Duvall family that ran Duvall's store. And her brother Peter and I were classmates in high school and are still good friends, even though he's way out on the West Coast and I'm here. Once in a while he answers my phone calls. And sometimes he even emails me. But we're old boys, and we used to have a good time riding around town in his father's old Buick. Peter always needed a cushion, because in those days he was a little guy. He grew all of it. I don't know when he grew, but he grew later on, because now he's bigger than I am. I'm 5'6", but he really was a little guy in high school, and got picked on a little bit, but all in fun. I remember he got stashed into a locker in the boys' locker room once, but I don't know if he ever told his sister about that or not. But anyway, without further ado, Cukie, who has found water under this building when he was teaching us how to search for water, is going to tell us about farming as he remembers it, as well as about how to lose your lunch. So I'm going to turn this microphone over to you, Cuke.
My wife is totally blind, and I am on a road to join her, I think. That's why I carry these things, which I don't use until it's absolutely necessary. It's only about 6 hours on this paper, so first of all, he calls me Cukie. That's my nickname. In the 7th in the 5th grade of school, 1937, I came to school one morning, and John Gavush, the Polish boy who lived on Division Road, called me Cucumber Macomber. Well, that went through the school like wildfire, and I was so angry. Everybody was calling me Cucumber. But by the time I got to high school, they had whittled it down to Cukie. I signed my papers Cukie. The teachers all call me that. And no matter where I go, people see me and they say, "Hi, Cukie." If they call me Carlton, I'd say they can't be friends of mine. So to get on to farming, the Macombers in the United States all came from 3 brothers. And they left Inverness, Scotland in 1936 to go to Plymouth Colony, but only English citizens were allowed to go. So they had to live in England for 2 years. They were declared citizens, and they came here. John, James, and William. I'm from the name of William. Is Horace Wilde here?
Not today.
No.
He's not here. Okay. I'm 93, but we had a birthday for Horace about, I don't know, 4 months ago, something like that. He turned 100, and he's still driving his cars. And I had to give up driving because I couldn't see. Okay, when those 3 brothers came to the Plymouth Colony, they were coopers. They built wooden barrels. And it was a very prestigious trade in those days, because if you wanted to ship something on a sailing vessel and you didn't want it to get wet, it had to be in a barrel, because they had no way of keeping the decks tight. When it rained and the water came over the rail or whatever, but if the decks got wet, they tightened up. But when there was no water around to swell them up, they leaked like the devil. So building barrels was a great thing in those days. And as they went along through the years, William wound up in Taunton. And his son, who was William III, somehow, and I have no way of finding out how, he came to Westport. And he loved it. And it was in the middle 1700s, he bought 40 acres of land alongside of what's today Main Road in Westport. And within a couple of years, he had 400 acres. And I haven't seen anything about who he bought it from, how he paid for it. It could have been from Indians. It may not have been. I don't know. But the house is still standing that he built, and most of the property that's still in the family belongs to his great-great-grandson, I guess it would be, Howard Gifford in Westport. And William was a very progressive guy. He dammed up brooks. One of them was Dunham Brook, and cut ice in the winter and put it in ice houses that he built. And then in the early spring and summer, he delivered ice all over the Fall River. And another descendant of his was Nathan Macomber, and he did the same thing, and Howard Gifford actually helped him deliver ice back in the 30s. So he developed the farm, and I don't know what he raised, but certainly it was cow feed or human feed. I don't know which, or both. But he had 2 sons, and you know, the names they gave him in those days, I can come up with one, and I don't know, can I? One was Abiel, 2 brothers, sons of William, and they went to an agricultural show one year, and they came back with the idea of how to crossbreed vegetable seeds. And they proceeded to crossbreed the turnips, the rutabagas that were available with white radishes. And it turned out to be a very successful thing because the Macomber turnips tasted so much better than those rutabagas. The white radish gave it sort of a tangy taste. And now lots of farmers raise them, including me. There is one thing that most of the farmers don't do to make a better product, and that is that the turnip should be left in the ground until it's been hit by 3 heavy frosts. It makes the whole thing much sweeter, much better tasting. But if you go in Lee's Market or any other place that sells Macomber turnips, they haven't had that. They pull them early because they want to get the big money. Towards the end of the season, you don't get as much money for them. That's, mine are staying in the ground until, and these days I don't know whether we ever get a frozen frost. Ordinarily, years ago we'd have frost by now, but we certainly don't get it until late November or December anyway. Nothing to do with farming, but when William III came to Westport, one of the things he did, he lived at Westport Point first. He connected 11 houses with a telephone line. They could talk to each other, but there was no way to call out because there was no such thing around here. But he evidently found this information in a book on what to do, and he built the telephones, and he built set up the wires between the houses. Andrew Macomber was a descendant, and in the middle 1800s, he owned 3 farms in Westport. He owned what is today the Westport Rivers Vineyard and Winery, and he also owned one that J. Tripp owns on Hicks Bridge Road. He also owned one on Charlotte White Road, which today is a big, very well-built development. Whoever did it did a nice job. And my father was born in that house on Charlotte White Road. One thing that Andrew did, he was called up for the Civil War, and we have a paper that shows where he paid a man $200 to take his place. When I first saw that, I didn't think it was the right thing to do, but since I have found it through his history records, it was a normal thing to do and very acceptable by the government. In other words, Uncle Sam didn't care who went as long as it was somebody. Well, my father, of course, was a Macomber, and as he grew up, he decided he wanted to be a farmer. just like the farmers before him. And, oh, thank you. How do I turn it off? Because I don't need it all the time.
Just hit down, just push the end in.
I got it. But he wanted to go to agricultural school. This was probably about 1918, I guess, something like that. And but he didn't have enough money, so he had to work somewhere to make enough money to pay his tuition at the agricultural school. So he went working in an auto repair shop in New Bedford. And everything was going fine. He was accumulating money. He figured he was going to be all set to go to school when along came my mother. And that did it. They got married, and of course he had to have a place to live, so they built a house, which my son lives in today. And he really couldn't afford to go to agricultural school then, but he was an experienced mechanic. So he built a he bought a blacksmith shop next door to where he built his house, and widened it some, lengthened it, and he started repairing cars. But it wasn't really big enough to do what he wanted to do. So eventually he bought another piece of land and built a big auto repair shop, and that's where he spent his working life. My father always had a nice garden, and it was in an area that flooded when you have a big rain, and some of the crops he lost because of that. But the WPA started cleaning the sides of the roads in Westport. Maybe some of you remember that. They had guys with brooms and other men with shovels, and they'd throw it into a truck and carry it away. Well, somehow some official stopped at my father's shop and said, we gotta find a place to dump the sand and stuff that we're picking up alongside the road. So my father says, wonderful, the land in back of the garage floods, so dump it there. So they did. They put in quite a few truckloads. My father got it spread around. And some farmer came in one day. He said, you covered your garden up? And my father said, no, I'm going to have a garden right there. You can't grow anything in that sand. And my father says, well, maybe not, but I'm going to try. So what he did, he had farmers bring him cow manure and spread it, and he just took a shovel and mixed it. Things were working different in those days. People today wouldn't want to do all that work. But he stirred it up good, and eventually he had a real nice garden. He had terrific vegetables coming out of that garden. Concerning the stuff that the WPA brought in there, my father, before that was done, had helped me to start a garden of my own. And I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. He bought the lettuce plants and the cabbage plants and the tomato plants and showed me how to plant them and so forth. But then along came this thing with the WPA, and my father said, I'm sorry, but we can't save them because we got no other place to put them. You're going to have to bury them. Well, I think I cried for a week or two, but I got over it. But that was my first experience at farming. I went to school in South Westport. It was a one-room school. I don't know why the town didn't save it, but it's gone. a one-room school with one teacher and 3 grades. And that was the greatest thing that could have happened to me to get on the right track. First of all, every day when I went to the school, I had a 6-inch hunting knife strapped to my belt. Can you imagine trying to do that today? But it was mighty handy. I could cut a limb and get the bark loose and make a whistle out of it and that sort of thing. And another thing that we did, we boys got together. We were surrounded by woods around the school. We boys got together and said, we ought to build a teepee. So I went with a hatchet. Other kids brought saws and hatchets and knives, and we cut saplings and stacked them up and tied them together and covered the whole thing with moss because we had a pond there and the edge was solid moss. And we had us a nice teepee before we got through. There's no way you could get away with that today, carrying all those dangerous weapons and so forth. But kids were more trustworthy in those days. You didn't have to worry about them shooting anybody or stabbing anybody. While I was attending that school, I used to work for Roger Atchison on his farm mornings. And I don't remember exactly, but I must have got up at about 4 o'clock in the morning and pedaled my bike down to the Atchison farm, which was about, I guess it'd be about a mile away. And first I cut asparagus. And the first day, at the end of the first day, I had a big blister in the center of my arm because you had to get all the asparagus you could possibly get because it made more weight. But when it went to the customer, they cut that piece off. But anyway, pushing that V knife down, it gave me a blister in my hand. And then when the carrots were ripe, I went the same time of the morning and picked carrots and had to wash them and leave the leaves on and tie them together to go to market. Another thing that I did along those lines, Nellie Petty was an old lady. To me, I thought she was about 200 because I was only a kid, you know. But she must have been 70 to 80, something like that, when I worked for her. I used to go down there mornings and work for her for a couple of hours. And then I would go and work Saturdays on her farm. She had quite a lot of land, but she didn't have any power equipment, and she didn't have a horse. Everything was done by hand. We planted the corn with a corn planter, which I have one today, and we harvested it the same way by hand. We cut with a scythe. We cut the hay, and so forth and so on. But now I'll bring up what Bob has told you. One day, Nellie said to me, "We got to clean the outhouse." So what? I've handled plenty of cow manure. And Ernest Tripp was working for me at that time. He was just a couple of years younger than me. But she said, "I want you to take it and spread it on the field." Okay, so we got the wheelbarrow and 2 shovels, and I opened the door of that thing and took 1 scoop. I dumped my breakfast in with the rest of it. And then Ernest did the same thing. I swore right then and there I would never, ever do anything like that again. I'll pitch all the cow manure, horse manure, whatever you got, but I will never touch human. At our house, we had an outhouse at that time, and at our house, we had a man come once a year, and that was his business, shoveling it out. This has nothing to do with farming, but I think it's interesting. In those early days, in the early 30s, and probably up till about 1940, the town of Westport plowed the roads, but they had the shoes set so that the blade was well above the blacktop. I think they didn't like the idea of tearing up the blacktop, so they had the blade way high, and everybody had to use chains on their rear wheels because you couldn't climb a hill with that ice. That it was snow, but it was packed down like ice, and you could hear a car coming with the chain just broke, and it's going bang, 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 bang on the inside of the fender. And some people drove around with those banging away for days. Other people would pull into my father's and have him take the broken one off, and they'd go on. Oh yeah, speaking of my great-grandfather Andrew's farm, which is the vineyard and winery today. Does anybody here know what a cow bridge is? C-O-W, cow bridge?
Yes.
Somebody say yes?
Yes.
Where are you?
In the back.
Oh. Do you know about the one on Cadman's Neck Road?
I do.
Okay. Well, that was a pretty neat idea. And I don't know whether it was my great-grandfather or somebody before him, or it could have been after him, I suppose. But that farm owned land both sides of Cadman's Neck Road. I know that on the west side, that was 50 acres, and it was all pasture land. And what they could do is feed the cows in the morning in the barn and then turn them out. And the cows knew where they had to go to get some decent food, and they walked down a fenced-in path over to Cadman's Neck Road, under the road. Whoever did it dug it out and put a bridge right over the path, and the cows would go right into the field and start eating. When it came time to come home, I understand that most of them came, but somebody had always had to go out there because there was always a cow or two that were just hanging around. They didn't want to bother going back to the barn, so they had to drive some back. But on the way out, those cows wanted that green grass, so they were glad to go. If you ever go into South Westport, you could. When I was a kid, the only greenhouses around was Have a Look Gardens on Pine Hill Road. Have a Look was the name of them. And I don't know if they're still operating or not, but they closed up from the last people that were using it. And I wrote a story in the Standard Times about those greenhouses. But since then, there are greenhouses alongside Cadman's Neck Road, but they're only a few years old. Westport has always had more farms than any other town in Massachusetts, and it is still so. And if you'll notice, we haven't got any big malls or anything to wipe out all the places. Like Fons Corner Road, that was all farms once. And I don't think there's a farm on it until you get way up to Old Westport Road. The Scotch farmers really took over in South Westport. And by the way, the houses along Hicks Bridge Road, centered by Horse Neck Road and Pine Hill Road, always was South Westport on the maps and everywhere. But when we lost the post office and we lost the general store and we lost the telephone office and lost the school, it's not known as South Westport anymore. But it was a wonderful place to be born in, because when I grew up, in my early growing up, there was 27 houses in that little village, and I think there's 21 kids my age, and the mothers did so much for all the kids. So I don't think we ever had one grow up and cause any problems like some of them do today.
How did the buildings get lost?
What's that?
How did the buildings get lost?
Somebody's got to tell me what.
How did the buildings get lost?
Where are you coming from?
From there, but I'm interpreting.
Oh, okay.
How did the buildings get lost?
Thank you.
How did the buildings get locked?
That's our question.
You said locked?
Lost.
Well, I'll tell you. 1935, my father and mother had worked since 1925 to build up an auto repair shop, and the two of them had worked real hard at it. 1935, my father says, "We're going to Canada." I said, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." So we did. And we never locked the house when we left. We were gone for 2 weeks. We got back, opened the door and walked in. And later on, in the 40s, my father and I were members of the Coast Guard Reserve, and we had meetings in New Bedford, and we used to drive in to the State Pier and park the car. In fact, he always left the key in the ignition. He never took it out. Now, you just try that today. You take it out and lock the doors, and they'll still steal your car. But things were so much better in those days as far as that part goes. And in my lifetime, until things started going the way they are now, I only remember one man being murdered. And I don't think they ever found out who killed him. But his body was found on, it's in Dartmouth anyway, on the street. And he's been shot. And that's the only one I ever heard of until we started having these automatic rifles and all that stuff.
What happened to your schoolhouse and things?
What's that?
What happened to your schoolhouse?
What happened to what?
Your schoolhouse.
Where did the schoolhouse go?
Oh. Well, that there was a man who lived on the corner of Hicksbridge Road and Horseneck Road. In fact, he had a band, and they played at Lincoln Park for quite a few years. They did that.
Marshall Perry.
What's that?
Marshall Perry.
Yeah, Marshall Perry. And you probably know more about this than I do. But when they stopped using the schoolhouse, we used it for public groups. My mother was part of an organization, used to meet there. But then when no one was meeting anymore, Marshall somehow got in with the selectmen, and they gave him the schoolhouse. And they moved it onto Marshall's property. And the last I knew, Ernie Ferry owned the place, and they were using the schoolhouse to store cans of oil and things for automotive use. And it's really a shame that. And there was another school identical to it farther down Hosnick Road, the corner of Hosnick Road and Cross Road, and a farmer took that one. And I just don't see how things are. I don't think they were legal, but nobody dared argue, I guess. Okay, 3 Scotch families moved into Westport, and one of them was the Bone family, and they bought a big farm on the north side of Hicks Bridge Road. One was John Smith, and he had 3 sons, and 2 of the sons took over what is today the Westport Rivers Vineyard. And then this Joe Smith, I think his name was, he came from Scotland, took over the farm next door. And it was a pleasure knowing those people. And I started in the welding and fabrication business in 1946. And it was an excellent time to start because the war had just ended, and the farmers couldn't buy hardly anything in the line of machinery because all the plants were making bombs and bulldozers and tanks and what have you. So there was nobody making any of that stuff. So I did quite a business building things that farmers needed, and some of them were quite intricate. One man came to me one day and he says, look, the only manure bucket loader available is the, sure, that's the one, Dingley was the name of it. Maybe any farmers near may have had a Dingley. But he said to me, the Dingley is okay, it does the job, but it's too big. It had arms that went all from the rear axle all the way to the bucket. And he says, there's no need of having those arms that long. So I sat down at my desk and I drew up a manure loader. And the first one I built was for Mark Gifford. Maybe some of you knew him. He lived on Hosnick Road in Westport. He was also a mail carrier, but he ran his farm in between carrying mail. It was just about half the length of the Dingley, and I made my own cylinders out of cold rolled cold rolled seamless tubing. I bought a couple others from Babbitt Steam in New Bedford. I made the pistons out of old truck tires, cut them out the right size to fit in the cylinder, and it worked very well. I built a couple more after that, and I built quite a few things. I built a winch for one farmer because this was before bales of hay. To get his hay up in the mow, we had to drive a tractor back and forth, and he was always afraid some kid was going to run out while he was backing up. So I made a winch to go in the back of his tractor so he could just stand there, and he had 2 handles he could pull to take the hay up into the top of the barn. So that was excellent timing when I started in that business. Well, right in South Westport, there was a Smith Brothers farm, a Costa farm, a Babbitt farm, Roy Chichester's farm, Atchison farm, Sylvia's farm, Willis Tripp's farm. And I got to tell a story about Willis Tripp. He was a farmer. He owned a farm that had been passed down through the family. and it had an old house. And I dated his daughter, and I knew how old that house was because it looks as though it's about to fall down any time. But can you imagine? He himself built another house right over top of that one. And I go to see my girlfriend, and there's a window there, but you're looking at a wall on the house on the outside. But I can't believe that's ever been done. I've never heard of it before. And he did it all himself. And before they got through, he had a beautiful home. Oh, and then a rich lady bought the farm and tore that house down. And I thought it was too good to be tearing down. I mentioned Nellie Petty and her farm. She was a retired teacher, and during the early 30s, she taught Sunday school at the Southwestport Church. She had a Model T Ford that I, as a teenager, could stand in it and my head wouldn't touch the ceiling. That's how tall it was. And she drove that. I rode with her a couple times going somewhere. She drove that, and Model Ts didn't have an auxiliary pedal. You had a handle under the steering wheel, and you just pull it down to whatever speed you want, and that's it. Well, I saw her go around corners, and I'd say, how did she ever do that? It didn't tip over. Well, there used to be a used to be a restaurant in the south end of Betancourt's farm on Hosnick Road. And what was the lady's name, Alice?
Mrs. Elliott.
Mrs. Elliott owned the restaurant. Nellie was going there one day, I presume, just to maybe get something to eat or something. Anyway, she wheeled into that restaurant and spun the steering wheel around, and over she went. Some guys came out of the restaurant, picked it back up. She continued driving, parked it. And she, when she parked that car in the garage, she had jacks that went under the hubcap. Model T Fords had a hubcap that stuck out about maybe 6 inches, and it was maybe 2.5, 3 inches in diameter. And you could put this jack under that hubcap, and then you just step on a lever, and it would pick that wheel right up off the ground. And she did it to all 4 wheels every time she puts the car in the garage. Of course, tires weren't so well made in those days, so maybe it was a good idea she did that. Do you get tired of hearing me say, That bothers me when people are giving a speech and they go, and I do it myself. I collect antique tractors. I don't have as many as I used to have, but right now I've got a 1938 John Deere B and a 1945, What is it, Paul? Anyway, it's what they call a market tractor. They use it to grow cabbage and lettuce and stuff that you'd be taking to the market. And I'm quite proud of those 2 tractors. I've had many others. I had 2 Silver King tractors. I put a story in the Standard Times about me and my club plowing the farmers' farms in the springtime. And I got a call from a man, and he said, I got 2 Silver Kings, would you like to buy them? And I'm thinking, I've only seen one Silver King in my whole life. I don't believe I can afford that. But I said, okay, I come and look at them. So I got another friend with me, and we went, and I was up on Fisher Road, and we looked at these two tractors sitting outside, and he says, my wife told me if I don't get those things out of there, she's going to hire somebody to come and get them. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, I can't afford these tractors. So I said, Friday, I said, how much you got to get for those tractors? He says, $150 for the two. I couldn't believe it. The guy with me, he's punching me. Give me the money quick. So I got them delivered to my house, and they're in good shape. They needed a paint job, but the rest of it was pretty good. And so I kept those for a few years, and then my age started to show that I got to be careful how much I'm taking on. So I decided to sell them, and I put the ad in an international magazine. And the first call came from a man in Idaho. And he says, I want those tractors. Well, I was asking, let's see if I can get this right now. I had two prices, one for the two of them together and one per tractor. And I think I wanted $900 per tractor and $1,600 for the pair or something like that. Anyway, he says, I'll send you a check tomorrow morning. Okay. Well, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, the phone rang steady with people calling because evidently those tractors are quite valuable. So I got $800 a piece for them. And man, that doesn't come out quite right. But anyway, you got an idea of what I'm trying to say. So a man called me from Vermont who lived next to my brother-in-law's, and I had met him before, and he says, I want to buy those tractors. I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't do it. They're gone already. I said, if I hadn't put a price on them, how much would you offer to get those two tractors? He said, I'd have given you $4,000 apiece. Guess who was mad? For God's sakes, we made a big profit. Anyway, see where... What's that?
Working, was using the horse rather than the tractor.
What she said,
Well,
Bob?
know how many farms used horses instead of tractors?
Well, horses were used in quite a few farms during my early life. J.T. Wilds on the corner of Division Road and Slade's Corner Road. He had mules. And well, this was going to come up later, but as long as you brought it up, I got to tell a story there. Man lives across the street from us, had two mules, and it's hard to believe they were mules. They were bigger than an average horse. Their backs were way up in the air. And one year, the Rhode Island Antique Tractor Club was plowing Sam Bones fields in the spring. And we did that for quite a few farms each year. So Miles said he wanted to bring his mules and plow along with us, so it's okay. So he brought his mules over there, and he had a sulky that went behind the mules, and then the plows hooked to the sulky. But he was always screaming at us, get those tractors going! My mules can't go that slow. And we're not paying much attention to him. All of a sudden, a wheel falls off the sulky, and there he is sitting there. So we started yelling at him, get that thing out of the way so we can plow. Speaking of plowing, I developed a way of sharpening plow points for farmers. And I got $5 a piece per plow point. And what I did, I added on a piece of high carbon steel. And like I said, I got $5 a piece. One farmer up on Old Westport Road, I had dealt with him before, and I did not like him. I wish he'd take his work somewhere else, because he always argued over the price. If I charge him $3, he wants to give me $2. And he argued real hard. So I was doing his plow points, and he argued about it every time. So one day he came, he had 2 plow points. And he threw them on the shop floor, and he said, I'll be back in a couple of hours, pick those up. I said, no, you won't. I picked them up, and I took them out, and I threw them back in his car. Oh, talk about screaming. But I wouldn't do anything else for him because of his actions towards what I was charging. What's that?
Did you use horses to plow?
What'd she say?
You use horses yourself to plow?
No. No. Actually, the only plowing I did was when I was maybe 45 years old, and that was in the Rhode Island Antique Tractor Club. We plowed the Bone Farm. We plowed I'm trying to say the one in Little Compton that's so famous.
Peckham.
What's that?
Peckham. The Peckham farm.
No.
Wilbur Farm?
It's right at Forglen.
Farrell Bing.
There it is, Farrell. We plowed their farm every year, and so I built a trailer to carry my John Deere tractor, and when we were plowing the Smith farm one day, not Smith farm, Bone farm, somebody took a picture of me on my tractor. You don't realize how high the seats were on those John Deeres until you look at that picture. But they wanted you to see the cultivators when you were cultivating, so they put the seat way in the air. Okay, I'm getting near the bottom here. I just got a list of farms that were all around this area, my area. Oh yeah, Nellie Petty's farm that I mentioned to you had a hill down by the river, and it was called Turtle Hill. And it was called Turtle Hill because it had one huge hill that was maybe 75 feet high, at least 75 feet anyway. And then a smaller one right near it, so it was like a turtle's head. And I built a trailer home to go behind my bicycle. And quite often in summers I would go down there for a couple of weeks and park the trailer up on top of that hill and stay there for, say, a week. But Reuben Small bought the property, and he's the one that developed Small's Village and Horseneck Beach. And he needed to build a road through the village for customers, so he took away the turtle's head. So the turtle's back is still there, just as plain as can be, but there's no head anymore. Oh, did I say that Model T Ford of Nellie Petty's, the one I could stand up and hit my head on her overhead, is sold for $75 at auction? And I was there, but I didn't have $75. But, oh man, would I have loved to have paid $75 for that. Some guy up on Route 6 bought it.
Getting back to the Macomber turnips.
What's that?
Getting back to the Macomber turnip.
Yeah, what about the Macomber turnip?
How much
Somebody up front, tell me
the
what she's saying.
How about the money that somebody made for crossing the white radish with the Macomber turnip? Was there money to be made in that crossbreed?
Let's have that
The
again.
person who crossbred the radish with the Macomber turnip, did that person make some money for the new crossbreed? The radish with the turnip?
No, all he got was what he sold. He sold the seed in the future.
Uh-huh. Did he make money?
No. I don't. No, in those days, I don't think they did it from money. But the biggest grower of Macomber turnip seed was Bob Martha right here in Dartmouth. He really grew a lot of turnip seed, and all you had to do was plant the rutabagas with the white radish side by side, and the bees come along and move the pollen around, and you got a Macomber turnip. But down on Cape Cod, someone said they had found out down there they have a Macomber turnip, but they call it white turnip. And they claim that it's the same identical thing, you know.
How about the dairy farms? When you came to Westport to buy cows, they weren't always growing potatoes and corn. They were growing cows, weren't they? Didn't they have dairy farms here?
What's that?
They had dairy farms, cows.
Mostly dairy farms,
Mostly
yeah.
dairy here in Westport. And
Now, that's a good point to bring up. Sam Bone was a strict Scotsman, and everything had to be done right, or else. I don't think he ever hit anybody, but anyway, he had a dairy farm, and he had a bunch of cows, and one day he came into my shop, and I could see that he was all to pieces about something. I said, Sam, what's the matter? He says, the inspector just came to look at my milk room. They told me I got to put 2 more windows in that milk room. What for? Milk doesn't come from windows. And the windows have no use, I mean, because we had enough light to see what we were doing. He got so mad he sold the whole herd. And that's when he started raising potatoes. And potato became his main product after that. But that's the way Sam was. Everything had to be right. He was a member of the welfare board in Westport. And another day he came in, same thing. You could tell there was something wrong with Sam. So, Sam, what's the problem? He says, well, he said, so-and-so, he named a woman. We told her we couldn't build her a new kitchen. We fixed the one that's there. We couldn't build her a new one. So she went to the state of Massachusetts, and they came right out and said, okay, we'll send a crew down here and build a kitchen for you. And Sam was so angry. He said, she didn't need a new kitchen. She just needed some repair work done. But evidently I don't think she was a widow. I don't think she was ever married. But he was quite a character, and he was as honest as anybody could be. And he sold international farm equipment. Well, I got down to the bottom of my list, and I may have jumped over a few things, but
What happened to Southwestport?
what's that?
He said, what happened to Southwestport?
What happened to Southwestport?
Yeah, what happened to the town? What happened to all the buildings?
You mean, why isn't it called Southwestport now?
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, because of all the things that were there and are not now.
Where did they all go? Why did they disappear?
Well, the post office, they found they didn't need it anymore. And by the way, I was a mail carrier for 2 years out of that post office. And the last carry of the day started at 4 o'clock, so I got through work every day about 7 o'clock. I don't know if these guys today would allow that to happen. But there was the Second Christian Church is right there, and that's been made into a house. The schoolhouse is gone. The telephone office is no longer there. It's on Drift Road now. And the general store was really a wonderful thing. It was sort of like Duval's store, but yet not. It was an entirely different shape. And but they had a grain room in the back where you could buy hay and grain and rabbit feeds and whatever you wanted. But as far as I'm concerned, the only business to make it a place to go to was my father's auto repair shop. He operated that for, I think it was around 42 years. And he died at 75. And I say what killed him was for most of his years working there, he didn't have an exhaust fan. And I worked for him for a couple of years when I was in high school. But he'd have cars running in there and you couldn't see across the room because of the smoke. But nobody thought of it in those days. And I think he would have lived a lot longer if he hadn't had that all the time. I went to work for Prelude Corporation and in later life, and I was in charge of maintenance and construction for the corporation. And one day I was tuning a generator in the bow of a boat, and I had the ear protectors on so I wouldn't get harmed by the noise, so I couldn't hear anything else either. But anyway, I was standing over that engine, and all of a sudden I was looking up from the they call it the cabin soul, the deck in the cabin. I was laying there looking up at the ceiling. What's this? So I managed to get up and get out on deck. Well, I'd been breathing carbon monoxide all that time, and my eyeballs turned bright red. I had pain in my head for quite a few days after that. So why I'm saying that is there are people who have things going in their houses making that carbon monoxide and don't realize what they're doing, like a generator. We had 2 people who died on Horse Neck Beach because this was in the fall and they wanted to stay a little longer, so they had a electric heater going. And no, not electric. It was a gas heater. Sorry. And somebody went to see them on a Sunday afternoon, and they were dead in the cottage over that carbon monoxide.
Yeah, I have a question for you. We have a birthday party for you to get to. Do you have? Can you answer one more question for us?
Sure.
You talked about losing your lunch, and I've been around.
I said breakfast. Now pay attention, will you?
I've been around a few farms, and I remember cleaning chicken coops
Yeah.
in the summertime. And that was pretty bad.
The
I
fumes from that chicken manure is really something, especially in hot weather, when you stir it up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the chemical is, but boy, it really hits you.
You could lose your lunch over that, and your breakfast too, right?
No, I never had that trouble in
I
the
also
chicken
remember
coop.
the springtime when we were spreading manure with a manure spreader, and that was pretty lethal too.
Oh, yeah. Except that for some reason, it never bothered me. But human was a different story.
Oh, I'm sure.
I know very well it was strictly a mental thing, you know.
Oh, yeah, well, I promised you I would let you get to your birthday party,
Yeah.
and I know there are other questions, but it's difficult for you to get the question. So, one more question, and then we'll break for refreshments, and we'll thank Cukie for his beautiful presentation.